when silence became the most expensive amenity. At first, guests thought something was wrong. No background music in the lobby, no soft hum of hidden machinery, no curated soundscape guiding emotion, just silence. So complete it felt deliberate, almost confrontational. This hotel was built in a place already quiet by nature, far from cities, roads, and flight paths. The landscape offered stillness few people experienced anymore. Most developers would fill that silence, afraid guests might mistake it for emptiness. Instead, this hotel did the opposite. It protected it. To understand why this decision mattered, we need to look at what silence had become in the modern world. Constant alerts, endless background noise. Even luxury spaces filled every moment with sound designed to reassure, distract, entertain. Silence had become rare and unsettling. The architects recognized something others missed. Silence was not the absence of experience. It was the absence of intrusion. And in a world overloaded with signal, that absence had value. Design choices followed a ruthless philosophy. Mechanical systems were isolated and dampened beyond industry standards. Materials were selected for acoustic softness, not visual impact. Even footsteps were considered, with floors engineered to absorb sound rather than announce movement. The result was uncanny. Rooms felt larger than they were. Time slowed without explanation. Guests noticed their own breathing, their own thoughts, sometimes for the first time in years. The hotel did not impose calm. It revealed it, but silence introduced risk. Without noise to mask imperfections, every sound became amplified. A door closing too loudly, a distant cough, a dropped object echoing longer than expected. Perfection was no longer optional, it was required. As opening approached, the team wondered if they had gone too far. Could people pay a premium for something most spaces try to eliminate? Could silence truly be an amenity, or would it push guests away? The answer would not come from design theory. It would come from how long guests chose to stay once nothing was speaking to them at all. The first guests arrived cautiously, unsure how to behave in a place that offered no sonic guidance. Conversations began quietly, then faded altogether. Footsteps slowed. Doors were closed with care. The silence did not demand attention. It demanded respect. At first, discomfort surfaced. Some guests reported unease, as if the absence of sound exposed thoughts they had been avoiding. Without background noise to soften the mind, emotions rose more clearly. Restlessness appeared. Time felt unfamiliar. Silence, it turned out, was not immediately soothing. The staff noticed the pattern quickly. Stays shorter than 3 nights often ended with polite confusion. But guests who stayed longer changed. On the 2nd day, shoulders dropped. On the 3rd, sleep deepened. By the 4th, silence no longer felt empty. It felt generous. This shift became the hotel's quiet reveal. Silence was not a luxury you consumed instantly. It was one you acclimated to. Operations adapted around that truth. The hotel encouraged longer stays without advertising why. Schedules softened. Activities became optional suggestions rather than events. Even dining was redesigned to allow meals to unfold without interruption, with service that appeared only when summoned by presence, not sound. Conflict emerged as demand grew. Marketing teams struggled. How do you sell silence without turning it into a gimmick? Photos couldn't capture it. Videos ruined it. Words felt inadequate. Investors pushed for subtle soundscapes to ease guests in. The design team resisted fiercely. Any added noise would break the trust the place had built. Instead, they leaned deeper into restraint. Guides were written explaining what the hotel would not provide. Arrival notes prepared guests for discomfort before comfort. Silence was framed not as a feature, but as an agreement. The hotel would protect it if guests allowed themselves to stay long enough. Critics scoffed. Some called it pretentious. Others dismissed it as impractical. Yet something undeniable was happening. Return visits increased. Guests who left uneasy came back curious. Those who stayed long enough told others not what the hotel offered, but what it removed. Silence spread through recommendation, not promotion. And slowly, the hotel discovered the most dangerous question of all. If silence had become this valuable, what did that say about the world guests were escaping from? That question lingered beneath every quiet corridor and every unbroken night. Guests did not speak it aloud, but they carried it with them. If silence felt this rare, this powerful, then something essential had been missing long before they arrived. The conflict deepened as the hotel gained recognition. Demand increased, waiting lists formed, and with popularity came pressure to soften the experience. Advisors suggested guided sound therapy sessions, gentle ambient tones, transitional music to help guests acclimate. Each suggestion was framed as compassion. The team saw it differently. They believed silence was not something to be diluted. It was something to be trusted. Yet the emotional cost was real. Some guests left early, unsettled and frustrated. Reviews occasionally mentioned discomfort, even anxiety. For a business built on restraint, every negative response carried disproportionate weight. The question was unavoidable. Was silence healing? Or was it only healing for a certain kind of person? The answer emerged not through opinion, but through behavior. Guests who struggled most were those who tried to fill the silence. They scrolled, they whispered, they searched for distraction. Those who surrendered to it experienced something else entirely. Memories surfaced, thoughts slowed, emotional fatigue softened. Silence became not an absence, but a container. Staff were trained not to interrupt that process. No casual check-ins, no background reassurance. Presence was offered only when invited. The hotel did not guide guests through silence. It allowed silence to do the work. The emotional peak arrived during a week-long stay program introduced quietly, without promotion. Guests committed to remaining on property for 7 days, with no structured activities and no entertainment. The first 2 days were uncomfortable. The third was quiet. By the fifth, something shifted. Guests began describing clarity. Not dramatic insight, but a gentle ordering of thought. Sleep deepened. Appetite regulated. Conversations, when they happened, felt deliberate and honest. Silence was no longer something they were enduring. It was something they were protecting. This transformation revealed the hotel's true role. It was not offering escape. It was offering contrast, a place where the noise of the outside world could finally be heard by its absence. But with that realization came a final challenge. If silence had become the most valuable luxury of all, could it remain intact once the world discovered its price? The answer emerged through discipline, not expansion. As attention grew, the hotel resisted scale. Capacity remained fixed. New bookings were limited. Silence, they understood, could not be multiplied without being diluted. It could only be protected. The true climax of the story arrived when the hotel made its most controversial decision. It declined several high-profile partnerships that promised global visibility. No satellite locations, no branded experiences, no replication. Silence, once commodified, would become performance again. And performance was exactly what this place refused to host. Guests continued to arrive, but the tone had changed. They came prepared. Phones stayed in pockets longer. Voices softened instinctively. The silence no longer shocked. It welcomed. Inside, the experience deepened with time. Without constant input, the mind recalibrated. Thoughts slowed into coherence. Rest felt earned rather than induced. Guests described leaving not refreshed in the usual sense, but reorganized, as if something essential had been returned to its rightful place. The hotel's influence spread quietly. Designers spoke about acoustics with new reverence. Wellness spaces reconsidered how much stimulation they truly needed. Even homes began borrowing the idea, carving out rooms that did nothing except remain quiet. Silence had not become fashionable. It had become necessary. And that is the resolution of when silence became the most expensive amenity. In a world saturated with noise, the rarest comfort was not what could be added, but what could be removed without fear. This hotel did not sell escape. It offered a pause long enough for people to hear themselves again. Not everyone wanted that, but those who did were willing to protect it fiercely. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future. When